Okay.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to In Between Pages with James Lott Jr. I'm James Lott Jr. And I have when they throw the word around legend, sometimes I'm like, yeah, not really. This person is. Let me give you a list of some of the things that you may know him from. Brandon Lou Jack Spalding and later Nick Henry from Guiding Light. Dr. Scott Clark from one of my favorite shows, Santa Barbara. David Chow from Young and the Restless. My favorite, David Hayward from AMC, All My Children. He was stopped by Days of Our Lives, did Damos Kiriakis, and he was also on B&B for a second, doing Jordan Armstrong. I mean, and this guy has no Emmys, and I think it's a travesty of justice.
Oh, I do have an Emmy. I have an Emmy.
You have an Emmy?
2009. I have an Emmy.
That's why he did. So he does say he has one. You should have more than one, though. You should have more than one.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I've been nominated, I think 4 times.
You've been nominated a lot. You've been nominated a lot. So
4 times, yeah.
Irizarry. Irizarry, folks.
Yes.
But yeah, you have one
Yeah,
Emmy.
thank
That's what to
you.
say. You have one. You should have more. You should have a shelf load of them.
Well, that's very sweet of you. I was nominated as Lou Jack. That was the first TV job I ever had. And then I was nominated again for Dr. David Hayward. I think it was like 2002 or 3 or something like that. And then I was nominated again and won in 2009 for Dr. Hayward. And then I was nominated once more for the role that I did on Days of Our Lives with Damos Kiriakis.
With Damos, yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you, because you must know everybody in daytime.
It is, you know, I've said this before. I mean, the wonderful thing about daytime television, it's like one big repertory company, you know? And every time I go to another job, to another show, I know at least 25% of people there, sometimes even more. And I'm not just talking about the actors. The actors, more often than not, I know more of them than anybody else, but also in the crew, people that are working behind the camera, in the production office, directors, writers. I've worked with so many of them. I've been in this medium now for since 1983, so it's up to 40 years that I was in that medium. And I feel very proud of being somebody who's been able to be in that medium for that long and working with some of the hardest working, some of the most talented people around. So yeah, I do know a lot of people in that medium, in that industry.
Yeah, you do. I mean, we're going to talk about some of the people that you have worked with, legendary people that you have worked with, like Beverly McKinney and people like that. We're going to talk about that in a sec, and John and all that. But when I say all those names, when I say all those characters you played, you just realize you're in the business for 40-something, almost 40 years. What does that mean to you now? When you think when people bring that all up and collectively, what does that mean to you?
It's funny because, especially because of platforms like YouTube, I'm constantly seeing old videos of me from way back when. Some, even my first time stepping in front of a camera on TV, it's there on YouTube. So I'm reminded of those. And there's so many instances where I'll see a scene that I'm really happy with, and I'll look at it and go, I don't even remember shooting that scene because I've done so much material. So many people, and occasionally I'll even be on camera with someone, I can't remember the person's name. And I'm like, oh, it's like on the tip of my tongue, I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
You know, I feel very privileged, really honored to have had the opportunity to work in for that medium for that long, in that medium. And it's just been some amazing opportunities to work with so many incredible veterans and talented people. You know, I got to do a shout out to somebody. I never had a chance to work with him, but he recently was with Tom Pelfrey. He was on Guiding Light.
Yeah, Tom Pelfrey. Oh, yes, he's amazing.
I met him once, just I think it was at the Emmys, and walked up to him and said hello to him. I don't know if you even remember that. It was a long time ago, because people were really talking about his work at that time as well. But the work that he did on Ozark, his past, was amazing, amazing. To play that character the way that he did and to capture that illness of his, brilliant. You know, for those who don't know, he's playing someone who's bipolar.
Yeah.
And he just, I can't even imagine anybody being able to stand up against him in the supporting actor category for the Emmys or the Golden Globes. He has so much amazing material. He blew everybody away. I really did by far. So, you know, I'm really happy for him. So that somebody as a daytime veteran, to see somebody like that get the opportunity and then to shine as well as he did was pretty awesome.
I agree. No, I totally agree. And I think I've seen him in other things too. And he's just, I knew he had it. When he was on Guiding Light, he had it. I mean, just like you could just tell with some people.
I saw something in him. That's great. Yeah. I didn't know much of his work at the time, but I did see him around a lot, certainly on magazines and flipping through. I'd see a few moments and stuff. But so.
He was amazing. And his stuff with Kim Zimmer was like legendary. It was just amazing.
Really? Wow, that's awesome.
And you know, Kim's a legend.
Kim who?
Kim Zimmer. You know her. You know Homegirl.
That sounds vaguely familiar to me. Zimmer.
We would change.
If I saw her face, you know, I'm a visual guy. I probably
so she's a legend too. Okay, so do you know this, that people are screaming for you to be on General Hospital as Dr. David Hayward?
You know, it's interesting. I mean, they've been doing that for a long time. It just seems like lately there's been sort of a fever pitch.
Yes.
And I'm very grateful. You know, that's wonderful that people are thinking of me in that way. I'm so grateful to the support of the fans. I can certainly understand why. I mean, Finola's been on that show for so long. Her character is such a mainstay, a staple of that show, and she's really brilliant on it, as always, with everything that she does. But I could see why, because of the connection between the characters. I mean, it would be a reasonable, natural transition for that character specifically, Dr. Hayward, to be on there. And the fact that it is a hospital show.
Yes.
He is, let's be honest here, he is a world-renowned cardiologist. He's not like a general practitioner, okay? You know, so he certainly has something to offer, and he's, you know, still has a malevolent kind of nature about him. So that could fit in well too. But, you know, it's the fans speaking out about that, and I'm really touched by that, frankly, that they are thinking of me in that way. But it's their show. They'll decide what they think is best for it. And, you know, more power to them. I'm grateful for everybody on that show, that this show still stands. I mean, given the fact that I was on an ABC show and went, you know, to the graveyard, which was really tough. I mean, the whole process and the pseudo transition to online to iTunes.
I was going to ask you that. Yes.
Really successful when we did it. But with all the political things going on between the network and with the production company, and it was just really sad to see that happen twice, that the show ended with no closure. I mean, not a lot of people realize this, but before Prospect Park came in and spoke of their intentions to bring it to the internet, we had a story that was going to come to an end. We had a closure. But when they came in and they licensed the rights to it, that changed everything, because then they need to create more story beyond that. It took them a lot longer to get it off the ground. Actually, which was crazy. I mean, it took almost 2 years for them to get off the ground.
Yes.
Literally had to, if I remember the dates probably, I know it was February. I think they had to have it at least in production by the last week of February, I think it was 2013, if I remember correctly. And they did. That was the first week that we went into production, was that last week of February, or they would have lost their rights to it. And they didn't have anything at the end of December of 2012 is when I got the call from Ginger Smith, who was executive producer, who was putting it together. She told me that she wanted me on the show, and I said, well, okay, well, who's writing? Who's the writer? And so we don't have any writers yet. We don't have any writers yet, and we have to do this by the end of February. Where are we shooting? Well, we're looking at different studios. So you don't have a studio. So do you have any sets? No, we have no sets built. They had nothing at that time. So literally within a 2-month period, they put this thing together, and I was walking through that soundstage in Connecticut with these beautiful sets. The story, the writing was excellent. Production values were excellent. That was really what was so hard about it. And then when it ended, just months later, it was again without closure, because we were being told we're coming back, and you know, so everything was just up in the air. That was the saddest part of the whole thing with All My Children and the ending.
Yeah, I really felt like they were ahead of their time with it. Now we have visual series everywhere, but they were just like they were ahead of their time when they decided. I know all the behind the scenes stuff was messed it up, but I wish it could have continued to see where it would be today. Actually, it'd be funny to see if they continued and
I know. I mean, I just feel like we owed it to the audience, especially the audience that had been with us for over 40 years, that there should have been some closure for them, you know, to wrap it up. Yes.
Why do you think David Hayward resonated with fans? Because you were a villain, yet you had a heart. I mean, it was like a little bit of both. You had a horrible mother and all kind of stuff. I mean, we'll talk about Marge saying in a second in real life. But I mean, like you came from, you were a complex character. But why do you think he resonated with fans?
It's a good question. I loved the character from the moment that I got the script. I mean, I was offered the role. It was only supposed to be for 3 months.
Oh.
Yeah, it was only supposed to be for 3 months. It was like a summer gig, basically, for 3 months. It was like I kind of equated with like what was it? All My Children fantasy camp. You know, getting work with all the actors and work out with Ruth Warwick, who's iconic, and James Mitchell, and all these people. David Canary and Susan Lucci. I was like, oh, great! So I'll be there for 3 months and move on. Turned into 13 years. And I think that the reason why is because I could see immediately the potential in the character. Because he was complex, he was multifaceted. He certainly had his virtues. He was, again, I don't need to emphasize it too much, but he was a world-renowned cardiologist. And he was also into, into pharmaceutical research, as we all know. He could have struck gold on that. So he had a lot to offer, but he also had a big chip on his shoulder. And it was interesting, though, because I saw the great potential in the character. They certainly did as well. After 3 months, they offered me a long-term contract. And when I first started on the show, it went for several months, and I finally had a sit-down with Angela Shapiro, who was the head of the network for Daytime at the time, and also Gene Burke, executive producer. And I spoke to him about my concerns because I felt that David came to town to get Allie back. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
That when Michael Lowry was playing Jake at the time.
Yes.
Get her back, and you saw his manipulations. His sort of devious workings that he was doing to make that to accomplish that, and he was very arrogant, and he had his those qualities about him. But I felt that after several months of this, he had no history with anybody but Allie. He had no history with anybody in Pine Valley. We knew nothing about his past. Yeah. I honestly said to him, I said, as much potential as his character has, I'm worried that if we keep going down this route without showing why he is the person he is, how did he become this man? Eventually, the audience is going to get tired of him because they don't have anything to hold on to. The best thing for me as an actor, if I'm playing somebody like that, is that I'm able to justify why the person does the things they do. Even if it's something, like I said, is malevolent, something, devious, he feels like it's justified, or she feels it's justified. And the audience is not able to see that if they don't know what makes this guy tick. So I asked them, I said, can you please bring somebody on the show that knows his history or brings in his history, his past? They love the idea, and they hit it out of the park with Marge Doucet and bringing in Vanessa, my mother.
Yes.
Because that was brilliant, and that changed everything for the character. Because you saw the first time, what I loved about the first scenes with Marge is that nobody knew who she was. She shows up to town, and it's at a party, and I see her across the room, and I'm talking to, I think it was with Erica, perhaps. And you can see like the blood drain from my face. It's like across the room, and nobody knows who the hell the woman is.
Yes.
And somebody's like, I'm distracted with something. Dr. Hayward, is everything all right? I was like, what? I'm like, I'm totally distracted. Later on, she's in the parking lot talking to Erica, and she is a heart episode. She starts with her chest. She grabs her chest. She falls to the ground, and I walk out to the parking lot, and I'm standing there with Erica. Susan Lucci looking. She goes, "Oh my God! Thank God, Dr. Hayward, you're here. This poor woman is having a heart attack." And I literally just walk up to her, look at her on the floor, and then I step over her and walk away. And Erica's like, what the hell? And Dr. Hayward, where are you going? And I just like leave. And the audience was left, what was that about?
Yeah.
But they come to realize that this woman was my mother, which makes it even more intense. But you come to realize my hatred for her is so deep because the story shows that I was there as an 11-year-old boy and watched her egg my father on to keep taking his own life, putting a gun to his head. And I ran into the room after he shot himself and held my father, who was bleeding out, in my arms. So that brings a level of history, okay, backstory, that I was able to work with very well as a character. Certainly defined the relationship I had with Vanessa, but it also defined my desire to be a doctor, because for me, I felt like every time I was saving a life, I was bringing my father back. I was fighting death every single time. So that justified for me why I became who I became. So yeah, I love that character because of that. When you have a backstory like that, and Deimos was like that too. So was Lujak. They had their backstories that you really could like grab onto it. And as a result of it, you asked because I was a villain by some people's standards, but people still love the character. They either love to hate me. And what I really felt, I felt really honored by is when people took my side, audiences took my side over the paragon of virtue, Joe Martin. And I was like, wow, that's a score for me. Because if I could get the audience to sympathize, empathize with why I am the way that I am, or why I've done the things that I've done, that's a success. So
yeah, I agree. I agree with all that. I agree with that. And you mentioned Deimos. We'll just briefly talk about Deimos. That they did give you a good backstory. They did for that character. We got the setup of why Deimos was tailed, why he was against Victor, the whole mother thing, and he's a half brother. I mean, they gave you the story. They gave you a good backstory, didn't they?
Yeah, and what I loved about it was because here you did come to Salem with the desire for vengeance. But as you see, even in the early scenes, somebody just played this the other day. He just wanted his brother to acknowledge what he had done and offer his apologies. He just was seeking forgiveness. And he even said that, if you just tell me that you're sorry, I will let everything go. From that moment when he wouldn't do that, that's when everything turned. And Deimos then continued on the path to seek retribution against his brother for basically, denying him, depriving him 30 years of his life. But I also love the part about Deimos that he was also a romantic. You know, he had the woman that he was, that he allegedly killed, which he obviously did not, his brother, unclipped brother, that she was the only love of his life because he got thrown in jail so early on, you know? And he spent 30 years with that image, that memory of her. And I love that they also, Ken Corday invited me to bring the piano playing into the character, which gave me the opportunity to play some Chopin, some Bach, Beethoven, Debussy. It was great. That was really Eric Satie. That was like a great scene with playing Eric Satie. I love that because it gave more dimension to the character as well. You know,
and you got a chance to work with my girl Ari Zucker, who I know. I love Ari. And John Anderson. I mean, those are people that just completely, you know.
Yeah, I know. John was the first scenes I did on the show, and I loved working with him. He's an amazing talent and just a gracious, wonderful man. He really is. Everybody on the show, I had such a wonderful time on there. I'm sorry that it only lasted the 2 years that it was on.
Yeah.
It would to play on no longer. But it was a great show, and I felt privileged to be on it. You know.
Yeah, I want to bring up a show that I love, and I know many of the actors. I've interviewed Nancy Lee Grahn and Louise Sorel. You know, Santa Barbara. You were on the last couple of years of Santa Barbara, and that show has a rabid following too. Still, kind of funny because it wasn't hugely successful. It was highly critically acclaimed.
Dobson. Oh yeah, it won the best show several years in a row. I think, if I remember correctly at the time. Yeah. What was great about the show was that it kind of had a tongue-in-cheek element to it. It had a lot of humor, and they played it great. I mean, you know, you had actors on like Justin Dees was fantastic.
Yes.
You know, Robin Mattson, and you know, they brought that comedic side to it, and then you had the more dramatic side with the Cruise and Eden side, you know, and I think my character and those people in my storyline, we were kind of like treading both sides of that. So, you know, sometimes the comedic as well as the dramatic. but it was a great show, you know, and I worked with some wonderful people on there as well, and some of them I had the chance to work with again, similar like A. Martinez on Days of Our Lives as well, and Marcy on Guiding Light, you know, and others as well throughout the years. And it really was, it's interesting because the show was such a huge international success. New World at the time did a fantastic job, brilliant job of exporting it throughout the world. And it just didn't seem like it grabbed on here in this country as it did internationally. But those that love soaps, that especially people in our medium, people that work in that medium, they looked at it like it was like one of the best shows around, and it really was a good special.
Yeah, it was highly critically acclaimed. I loved it. I watched it all the time. I got my grandmother into it. Usually it's the other way around, but I got her into it, and we used to call each other and talk about it. I mean, I loved the show. I thought it was more elevated than the others. Good. And you're right, the whole comedy, because soaps don't do comedy as much or as well.
No,
they try.
Yeah.
I mean, and David was a little snarky here and there on All My Children. He's a little snarky here and there, but like they never did out and out comedy, which Santa Barbara did comedy.
Right.
They did comedy.
Yeah, we did comedy, and occasionally I'll see some of those scenes on YouTube, and I'll be a little embarrassed by them. There was one that
YouTube, or not God bless YouTube, one of the two.
There was one that was it's really kind of funny. I can't believe it was with Jane Rogers, who was playing Heather at the time.
Yes.
And it unfortunately was during the writer's strike, and as you know, I mean, the shows were continuing on. We didn't know who was writing scripts at the time. But it was Heather's fantasy. It was Heather's fantasy, and I had to do this scene where it was like a Tarzan Jane scene, where I was in a loincloth. She was a skimpy bathing suit tied to two stakes, flaming stakes, and then you hear me off camera do the patented and I swing in on the vine, and I have an orangutan on me, okay, wrapped around, a real orangutan. This wasn't a prop, it was a real orangutan. And I come down and I have to like cut her off and like save her and pull her out. Well, the first take of that, I'm standing on a ladder. I'm going, I can't believe we're doing this. It's so crazy. Standing on this ladder, they handed me this orangutan, put him in my arms. I'm like, on the ladder. And the orangutan, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to hold an orangutan.
No, I haven't.
People have.
Yes.
But I will guarantee you, I'll tell you this, the whole bottom side is all calloused. It's very hard. And I'm going, oh, it's weird. And the thing is slobbering like right in my face. And I'm like, okay, all right, let's get this going. Come on. I'm like holding on to this thing. I'm holding on to the line. The minute I swung off and did the like really loud, the orangutan literally went like this to me, and like climbed up to my head, and then dove off. And I'm like on camera with this thing climbing around me, and I'm like, oh my God, that was like disgusting. So anyway, so we took it back to point A after that, and we decided I wasn't going to do the scream, I wasn't going to do the call until after I did the scene that we would put it in, because that was the only way. That thing was freaking out at the sound of me doing that. So that was one of the more embarrassing things that I did for a TV show.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's out there somewhere.
No, it is. It's out there. It's out there.
Try and find it, but oh my gosh, that was crazy. That was crazy.
I actually remember that, so I'm not. It's kind of. It's out there. I do. I love the show. I love the show. So I mean, like, but no, all that stuff is out there, folks. Unfortunately, people are uploading stuff all the time. You remember back then? That's when you were taping off the tape. You would tape it and then watch it. So folks are converting their tapes.
That's right. That's right. I actually have boxes of VHS tapes of shows in the 80s, and I don't know. I actually threw away like a couple boxes a few years ago when I was moving, so I was just traveling all over the place. I tried to limit them down. It was just too much. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but yeah, I do. I have a box here, like a bunch of Lou Jack stuff. I mean, that one was more special to me because it was the first show I'd ever done, and it was such a great character. And honestly, it sort of gave me a foundation for my professional career for the next 35 years.
That's what it's about right now. Now we're going. You're a perfect segue. We're going Randall Lou Jack Spalding. We're going into that because it was. I mean, I watched it in real time, and I remember the unveiling of all of it, and you know, stuff. I just thought that you're such a, you know, this young, bright, fresh actor, playing a character we hadn't really seen before, not really on Daytime. Like we have at that point, I don't think we've seen it yet. I don't think.
Yeah.
We're one of the first.
You're right. You're absolutely right. That it was atypical. The character was atypical. I was not the typical looking, you know, actor on a soap with wall-to-wall muscles on the chest and forehead. I was like this. I was the prototypical starving young actor. I'm embarrassed to say that I probably weighed about 40 pounds less than what I weigh today.
Yeah.
It really was. I was very thin, and I was basically like a nose with a fedora. I was wearing. They put me in those fedoras at first episodes.
Yeah.
I had hair, a nose, and a fedora.
Yeah.
So I wasn't the typical person that you might see on a soap, and the character wasn't either. And again, that was a 3-day role. It was only supposed to be 3 days work. And I just started working I was just starting work at Joe Allen's. As I was trailing someone. I had the audition at Guiding Light with Betty Ray, who was the casting director. I had a great audition. I actually was improvising with her. I had a cigarette in the scene. It was me and Mindy in the bathroom where I walked through the girls' room, flirting with Mindy. And I brought a cigarette in, and I was improvising with Betty Ray. I literally laid down across her desk and was hanging out talking to her. She was like, I got to get somebody. I'll be right back. She brings in Gail Colby. We sit down. I do the same thing with her. And then I go to work. And it was my first day I was going to get my own station after trailing. And my agent calls the phone behind the bar. Remember, this is 1983.
Yeah, no, right.
And I get the call, and they said, you got the role. They want you to start work in a few days. I was like, oh, that's great. And the people I'm working on, are you going to keep working? I said, it's 3 days. I'm not going to give up. I don't know what's going to happen in 3 days. But then 3 days turned into another 3 days, and then it turned into a contract. And it really was, for me, it was the foundation of my professional career in television. Because prior to that, I'd done 6 years of theater. That's all I had done. This was the first TV role I had ever done before, first camera work. And it was interesting also, because this has been one of the great ironies of my life, is that when I was a kid growing up, my grandparents, they watched soaps. Okay, my grandma, my father, my Italian grandparents from Sicily, they watched soaps, and because there was no, in the early years, there were no VCRs, so you had to watch it at the time that it was on. So my grandfather, who was a carpenter and upholsterer, who worked in their basement, that he had his workshop down there, and every day at the same time, he would stop my grandmother to make lunch, and they'd sit in front of the TV, and they'd watch General Hospital, okay? So General Hospital was their show. They also watched Days of Our Lives, which is kind of interesting, but they watched, General Hospital was their show. So I would walk through as a kid and watch them watching soap operas. When my brother and sister, when I was a teenager, started watching Luke and Laura at home in our house, I'd walk through the living room and I'd go, you guys are a bunch of losers. You watching soap operas? Because I equated it with like my grandparents, and they're like, no, this is so good. You got my brother and sister trying to tell me, no, look at this story. This is what's happening. I'm going, you guys are crazy, a bunch of losers. So the great irony of my life is that I've had a career on that medium, and I certainly have gained a great amount of respect for it as well. The other funny thing about it was because my grandparents watched General Hospital, which was the competing show at the same time slot.
Right. That's right.
They had a console TV in their living room. They got another TV to put on top of that TV, all right, when I first started on the show. And they'd have both networks on at the same time. And whenever I came on the camera, they would turn down the volume on General Hospital and watch my scenes and then turn it back up. It became more and more difficult for them because my character really took off, and I was in a lot of the story. So I finally, that's when VCRs really were kind of new. I bought them a VCR and I programmed it for them because there was no way they could have done it.
Yeah, that's true, right? Yeah.
Record everything, and that's what they did. And from that point on, so they could watch both of their soaps.
So you got to work with Beverly McKenzie.
Yeah.
And we talk about legendary. What was it like working with her? And being a young green actor and a seasoned veteran who, has a presence. What was it like for you?
Sure. And I mean, again, because I was not a soap an avid soap follower at the time. I didn't know Beverly. I didn't know her work. I didn't know who she was. All I did was that all I started to, how I found out about her was by her reputation. When she was coming on the show, everybody that was working on the show kept telling me, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe Beverly McKinsey's coming on to be your mother. She's like legend."
Yes, yes.
I came to find out like she was the only person that's ever had her name above the title of a show for Texas. It was Beverly McKinsey in Texas. Like, wow, that's pretty cool. Didn't intimidate me at all because I just didn't know her work. And my first moment meeting her, we had such a great immediate meeting and connection with each other. I adored Beverly. I did. And we worked together. It was like right before Mother's Day. And on Mother's Day, I brought flowers for her and left her in the room. She was so like, wow, this is great. We just had a great connection immediately. And the scenes that we had, I mean, I look at those earlier scenes and I'm just proud of them. I'm honored to have had the opportunity to work with her. I would say this, that especially being a young actor, having never worked in television before, I was certainly committed. I was very committed as an actor, and that was from my theater roots more than anything, to be disciplined and professional. But to watch people like Beverly and Larry Gates and others throughout my career, like I mentioned, James Mitchell and others, that always gave me something, a higher level to aspire towards, a professionalism. And that has carried out throughout my career. When I worked with Angela Landsbury, there was another person that was like, to see the professionalism of this woman and the love and adoration of all the people on that soundstage for her and how they all work together to make the best product possible. Murder She Wrote, which was on there. She was for 8 years at that time. I literally woke up. I went to the set hours earlier because I wanted to see her do her closing monologue that she does at the end of every.
Oh yeah.
She wrap up the whole thing.
Yeah.
I went there early to sit off camera to watch her, and she did every camera shot, one take, straight through, like 6. And it was because she showed also a respect for the people she was working with, that their time was valuable, and she showed that. And I always believe that on these type of shows, it's a trickle down effect. The people at the top, the performers, how they are and their level of professionalism, everybody else comes together. It galvanizes them. They work with that same level, and it's a mutual respect for one another. And I felt that way with Beverly. I felt that way with everyone. David Canary was a perfect example of that as well. And Susan Lucci, all of them, very professional in what they do. And I adore that. Beverly, we had a great relationship, and I loved coming back to the show and playing with her again as Nick McHenry. I just found an unearthed VHS tape that I just transferred to DVD of scenes of Nick McHenry when I came back to my twin brother. And I had some wonderful scenes on there. It was edited just excerpts of shows. And I had some great scenes with Beverly and also with Marcia Say when she came and replaced Beverly in the role, and others as well. I was like, wow, this is such great scenes. I sent them to somebody. If they want, they can list them. They could put them up on the internet. So
you also were part of a super couple. You were with Judy Evans, who we love. Back in the day, I mean, you had a little super. So talk about
Absolutely.
that. Talk about that side of the business of kind of like this. Now you're part of a love couple. I mean, you had a few on the show, obviously. That was one of your first big ones, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was interesting because when I first came on the show, it was Beth and Philip. That was super couple at this time with Judy. And at first, because the character was this antagonistic punk kid, like in everybody's face, and the audience was like, don't mess with Beth and Philip. But even literally, it was new for me working on a TV show because I'd be standing at a red light in New York City at a corner, and somebody come up to me and they would say something like leave Beth and Philip alone. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get something. I'm not bothering them right now, I promise you. But it turned. I mean, it was interesting because the way it was written, certainly, and because Judy is an amazing actress.
Yes, she is.
We connected immediately. As friends too, I adore Judy, and I'm especially sorry about what's happened with her son.
Yes.
It's been terrible.
Yeah. Can't even imagine. So I can't even imagine.
A few times since then. Yeah, so no, but having had the opportunity to create those characters together and that connection, it really changed when we did our location shoot in Montauk, Long Island, and the two of us riding that golden palomino on the beach, back with almost background. That was very romantic, and the audience loved it. And actually, that song became like a huge hit after that. They were able to get the rights for that song because at the time it wasn't that big of a hit. So, but once that happened, that just catapulted that song.
Yeah.
So that really what was the changing thing. And I just thought the character, I love the fact that the character, again, had great backstory and that he was the leader of a street gang, called the Galahad's. So he had his darker, edgy side, but he also was very vulnerable. He had to show real vulnerability, the character, and also, had other qualities. Piano playing, they brought that in as well, and came to find out that my real father was a concert pianist. It was interesting, and I loved playing that character. It was a great 2 years of my life. And I made the decision to leave when I left. And it was fine.
So you made the decision to leave. You made the decision to leave.
Yes, it was my choice.
Okay.
I mean, they asked me to stay for one more year, and I went down, and my agents thought I was crazy. Everybody thought I was crazy. But I did it only because I made a commitment to myself 2 years before. They wanted a 3-year contract. I only wanted 1. We settled on 2. And I made a commitment no matter what was happening with me at the time, because I was young, and I thought, this is the time of my life to take chances, So I didn't want to be on a show for a long period of time at the time. I did want to go out to California, Los Angeles, give it a shot and try to do other things. And I did. I mean, the first year I went out there, I started in a movie with Nancy McKeon, which was Firefighter. I finished shooting that and went and did Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood right after that. Then I went to Toronto and shot the miniseries Echoes in the Darkness, Joseph Wambaugh miniseries with Treat Williams and Robert Loggia and Stockard Channing and all these other people that were there. And I did something else. There was Law and Order. Not Law and Order. Yeah, LA Law.
Yeah.
I did that. It was a very productive first year after I left the show. But I did miss the steadiness of working on the daytime show. I did miss that a lot. That was tough, to have weeks in between gigs where I wasn't working. The reason that led me to Santa Barbara, frankly, because when I left all my children, Guiding Light, what's her name? She was a producer on Santa Barbara, and she went off to do the reality shows with Paris Hilton. And
I don't know her name either. I know you're talking about, but I can't think of her name either. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and I can't, and her production company still exists. She's part of, she has passed away, but the company's still. She came up to me at Santa Barbara, their first holiday party at the Playboy Mansion. Harley Kozak was on Santa Barbara at the time, and she to it. And she invited me to go to the party because I'd worked with Harley also. And I said, sure, I'll go to that. And I went, and it's frustrating because I can't think of her name right now.
I know. But
she came up to me and she said, I had just left Guiding Light, and she came up to me and she said, if you ever want to go back on the soap again, please let me know. I'd love to have you on the show. And it was 2 years later when I was as much as I had in the working on the soap. My manager, Doug Warner, we spoke, and I said, well, why don't you just call her and see if Mary Ellis Bunin. That was her name.
Yeah, that's her name. Yes, she went on to the whole Real World stuff and all that stuff.
Mary Ellis Bunin.
Yes.
Yeah, he called her. It was like 2 years later, 2.5 years later. He called her just to explore the possibility, and she said, I'll get back to you. She called back that day, and they offered me a contract that day. So we don't have a character yet, but we'll come up with one. They offered me a deal. It was a great deal. I was like, oh, it's hard to do.
Okay, I'll take that. I'll take that.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, it's your career, it's the dream of an actor to be a working actor. I mean, that's I guess that's the goal. I mean, yeah, the accolades are nice and the adulation is fun, but isn't the goal really just to keep working, just doing stuff, making it interesting, as long as you want to do it, right? That's the goal.
Yeah, absolutely, and to constantly challenge yourself, it's harder as an actor in this way, that you, for the most part, dependent upon those roles coming to you, you know? That's why at times I ventured out trying to get things done as a producer, because I feel as a producer I have more control over the content of what I'm hoping to be a part of, rather than just being a cog in the wheel as an actor, you know? This is the role that they need to satisfy the telling of the story. But you have very little control on how the story is being told, the production side of it, the people that are involved. So that's what I'm continually trying to do, is to work that out. I've auctioned the rights to certain scripts here and there, and one thing I almost got off the ground that was about to go into development with CBS years ago, but something happened and it fell apart, which was really tough because it was over a year of me like plotting it out. Even had a production company that was going to invest $1 million in it.
Oh wow!
It would have been a movie of the week. It was shot, Foxborough Productions. I don't know if they exist anymore, but they were in New York and they had committed $1 million to it, and we got CBS was showing some interest, and the whole thing fell apart. It was a true story, but it's still an amazing story, but it became problematic because some people that were in the story didn't want the story to be told, which is too bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, that's why I'm trying to do things like that as well. That's what I'm hoping to do. But I'm very grateful that I've had the opportunity to work as much as I have, and feel very fortunate that I've had such great characters like Lou Jack, like David Hayward, and like Damos, you know. Those are wonderful characters because they're so rich, you know, and that's what I really appreciate.
Well, I want to thank you for your daytime community service. You've done, I mean, you are a great actor who I could tell you put all into your work. And I personally am just like, thank you, because I've enjoyed your performances over the years, all the shows you've been on.
Well, thank you, James. I know I haven't seen you in a while, because I usually see you at places like the Emmys and stuff like that.
Yes.
So you're like on the receiving end there with all the other people in the media.
Yes.
So it's nice to see you, and this was very sweet of you to invite me to take part in this.
It's my pleasure, you guys. Follow Vincent Irizarry. He's everywhere. Vincent Irizarry. He's on social media, so he's there. So you can follow him there and say hi to him.
Yeah, I'm there.
And whatever projects he's working on, follow him and support those projects, of course. And if you have anything coming out, you can always come back on the show. We'll talk about it before, support it and get it out there.
Thank you, James. Yeah.
There.
Okay, yeah. Wonderful.
And I'm James Lott Jr. This is In Between the Pages with James Lott Jr. Follow us everywhere on social media platforms. And everyone, please stay safe and sane out there during this strange time.